As the movie begins, we witness a man skillfully carving an image of an Italian city onto a wall. This man's genes underwent a mutation following a nuclear disaster in Russia, granting him the extraordinary ability to track the whereabouts of anyone. Currently, he is being used by the military to locate a missing infant, armed with nothing but a sock that once belonged to the child. The scene then shifts to Italy, where Silenzi is riding his bike to school. He takes a detour to a costume shop for a Halloween party, but arrives too early as the store hasn't opened yet. Soon he reaches school, hides his money in his sock, and rushes to class. In class, Silenzi secretly records his crush, Stella, instead of writing his test. A police inspector named Giovanna, who happens to be Silenzi's mother, enters the classroom, concerned about a missing classmate. She encourages them to report any information they have to the authorities. Before leaving, she gives Silenzi a snack he forgot, while bullies mock him. Shortly after, Silenzi gets a nosebleed and rushes to the restroom. There, his bullies find him, steal his money, and give him a 10-second head start to escape. Silenzi rides home, upset that his bullies took his Halloween costume money. He logs into Facebook, hesitating about accepting Stella's Halloween party invite due to the lack of a costume. Eventually, he accepts the invite and checks his savings, realizing it's not enough for a cool costume. He visits a budget costume shop in search of a superhero costume. The shopkeeper offers one, claiming it's for a Chinese superhero. With no other choice, he buys it. When his mother returns from work, she finds Silenzi looking glum on the couch, disliking the costume. She encourages him before he heads to the party. At the party, Silenzi talks with Stella just before his bullies embarrass him by playing a video they copied from his phone. This makes Silenzi run and hide in the bathroom, pursued by his classmates. He locks himself in and wishes to be invisible while staring at the mirror. Suddenly, the lights go out, and he jumps out of the window, heading back home. He wakes up the next morning and starts brushing his teeth. When he looks in the mirror, he's shocked to see he has no reflection. Hurriedly, he returns to his room and removes his robe just as his mother enters. She picks up the robe, completely unaware that he's right in front of her. She notices his dog under the bed, seemingly hiding from something. She leans down to check, and as she does, invisible Silenzi writes a note saying he left for school early. She leaves his room shortly after and gives him a call. Silenzi answers, telling her he'll call her back as he can't talk right now. Confused about his next move, he decides to dress in a way that covers his body entirely and goes to school. Thinking this will raise suspicions, he prepares to leave. Just then, he spots one of his bullies with a paintball gun and comes up with a plan to teach him a lesson. He undresses and walks to class fully naked and invisible. There he discovers that the other bully is at the tennis finals. He takes the paintball gun and shoots at the teacher, leading to the bully's suspension. He then goes to the teacher's office, finds his blank math test, and copies all the answers from the answer booklet. Afterward, he heads to the tennis finals and taunts the bully, causing him to lose the finals. He notices the girls finishing up their PE session and decides to head towards their changing room to catch a glimpse of them in their birthday suit before their shower. However, his sneaky plan is quickly interrupted when a towel is thrown and lands on him, exposing his physique. The girls gather around him as his invisibility powers start to fade. To their surprise, one of the girls pulls the towel away, only to find Silenzi sitting there. The next day, Basili, a police psychologist, tries to comfort the students after finding out that one of them went missing. He emphasizes that running away won't solve anything. While he's talking, a classmate throws a piece of paper at Silenzi, calling him a maniac. Silenzi feels really embarrassed and quickly throws the paper away. Suddenly, his arms turn invisible as he tries to hide them under his jacket, anxiously waiting for the class to end. Basili tries to approach him, but unfortunately, the bell rings as Silenzi rushes out of the room. As Silenzi arrives home, he enters his room and discovers Candela engrossed in his comic collection. Annoyed, he turns his back on her and instructs her to go downstairs. However, Candela cunningly deceives him by slamming the door without actually leaving. As Silenzi removes his scarf and hood, Candela lets out a startled scream. Later, Candela proposes the idea that Silenzi's pajamas possess magical powers, to which he reluctantly agrees. Nevertheless, both of them worry over when things will return to normal. Despite their concerns, Candela firmly believes that Silenzi has transformed into a superhero, but Silenzi, on the other hand, dismisses this notion, convinced that he is nothing more than a hapless loser. While searching for answers in his comic books, Giovanna arrives home and calls out to Silenzi. He quickly undresses as she enters his room only to find Silenzi's clothes on the floor. She leaves to answer a phone call as invisible Silenzi silently follows her. He eavesdrops on her conversation with his grandmother over the phone and learns that he was adopted. This infuriates him, leading him to walk outside and spend some time alone by the sea while on a swing. Shortly after, Stella arrives and notices the swing moving by itself. Believing to be a ghost, she approaches the adjacent swing and asks him to be her friend since she doesn't have many. In response, invisible Silenzi draws a smiley face in the sand. Stella leaves for a training session as Silenzi promises to see her again. As she leaves, Silenzi sees a man staring at him, but he soon realizes that the man is blind as he pulls out his stick and walks away. That night, invisible Silenzi visits Stella in her room. He sneezes from the cold and she decides to cover him. They share a kiss, and immediately his powers begin to fade, causing him to flee. Back in his room, Candilla urges him to find courage and reveal his true identity to Stella. Following this advice, he leaves with his dog and heads to the school gym where Stella is in a training session. Her trainer leaves her to train while she grabs coffee. Suddenly, a man tranquilizes her. As Silenzi arrives, he sees the man carrying Stella and begins chasing him. His dog bites the man, but he manages to escape. Silenzi alerts the authorities, who arrive promptly with his mother, who assures him that he did everything he could to save her. Stella awakens in a lab with wires strapped to her head. After running some tests, the kidnappers realize she's not the one they were looking for and placed her in a room with other kids who were thought to have escaped. When morning comes, Silenzi discovers that his costume has been washed by his mother, which angers him, prompting him to storm out of the house and cycle to the seashore. There, a blind man approaches him and reveals himself to be his father, Andrej, but Silenzi doesn't believe him. He assumes that he is the kidnapper since he has been watching him. Andrej begins to tell him about where he was born. He explains that they had a normal life in Russia until a nuclear disaster occurred, leading to a gene mutation that gave them super abilities. They were captured and locked in a military facility in Siberia, where they underwent intense tests, resulting in the loss of his sight. Most of them became sterile, except for Andrej and his biological mother, Yelena, who possessed invisibility powers. Following his birth, they managed to escape the facility, but Yelena died in the process. Using his mind-reading abilities, Andrej discovered that Giovanna is a good person and left Silenzi at her doorstep for adoption. He further explains that Silenzi will eventually learn to control his abilities as he continues to grow. He also warns him to be cautious of the kidnappers who are searching for him. With all the kidnappings in the city, Andrej reads the mind of a fisherman nearby, who is trying to call the police and suspects Andrej's involvement. Andrej assures Silenzi that he will be there when he needs him, erasing the fisherman's memories before leaving. As he departs, he hands Silenzi a special suit, urging him to always wear it under his clothes and consider it as a special gift from his mother. Giovanna and other members of the police unit dealing with the kidnapping case arrive at the shore and question Silenzi and the fisherman, who has no recollection of making the call. Silenzi denies seeing anyone at the shore except for the old man. Vasily offers to take Silenzi home, as Giovanna needs to pick up his dog from the veterinary clinic. They later arrive home, and Silenzi rushes to his room to try on the suit, while Vasily prepares tea. Vasily sneaks into Silenzi's room, causing him to quickly hide his suit from him. At the dining table, Silenzi notices a bandage with a stain on Vasily's wrist, in the same spot where his dog bit the kidnapper while he tries to offer him cookies. Suddenly, Silenzi realizes that Vasily is the one who kidnapped Stella. He attempts to run away but discovers that the doors are locked and Vasily plans to abduct him. Desperate, he locks himself in the kitchen, removes his clothes, and becomes invisible. Vasily finally enters the kitchen but finds it empty, and he also confirms that Silenzi is Yelena's son. Vasily grabs some flour and starts tossing it into the air to locate Silenzi's position in the room. He spots Silenzi's footprints and follows them to his room, but he manages to get away. On the streets, Silenzi encounters one of his school bullies on his scooter by the road. He jumps on and urges the bully to flee, to which he agrees. They soon reach a safe location, and there, Silenzi reveals his true identity to the bully and informs him about the kidnappers. Giovanna later returns home with the dog, only to find the house in disarray. Andrej arrives shortly after, and they both leave together searching for Silenzi. Stella and the other boys in the cell devise a plan to signal for rescue. They assist Stella in escaping from the cell, and she finds a searchlight, where she draws a smiley face and turns it on. Silenzi and his former bully spot the smiley face from a distance, and both head towards it. However, Stella is soon recaptured and taken back to the cell. Using his paintball gun, the bully causes electric malfunction as a distraction while Silenzi becomes invisible and sneaks past the guards. Inside the control room, Silenzi discovers Vasily and other guards monitoring Andrej and Giovanna in the car, who are searching for Silenzi. Basili then requests one of the guards to check on Stella. As they leave, invisible Silenzi follows them and witnesses Stella being moved from one cell to another. Silenzi picks up a fire extinguisher and knocks out one of the guards. Another guard arrives, and Silenzi forces them into the cell at gunpoint. He frees his classmates and locks the men in the cell. Silenzi reveals himself to his classmates as he has now learned to control his powers. As they are preparing to leave, Stella mentions that there is an old man in the cell who also needs rescue. Silenzi instructs two of the boys to find their way out while he hands the gun to Stella and heads to the old man's cell. However, what Silenzi doesn't realize is that Stella is under mind control and leads him to a submarine where they find Arkleo, the mission commander who was sent by Yelena to retrieve the boy. Arkleo releases Stella from his mind control powers. Silenzi immediately turns invisible and begins attacking the guards. In response, Arkleo orders Silenzi to stop or he will shoot Stella. Meanwhile, Giovanna and Andre encounter the bully outside, and he guides them to the port where the kidnappers are holding the children. Giovanna also discovers that Basili is involved in the kidnappings. While at the port, the kidnappers launch the submarine and trigger a self-destruct sequence for their hideout. As they depart, Arkleo reveals to Silenzi that he is taking him to his mother, Yelena, and promises to thank him later, but Silenzi remains skeptical. Giovanna, Andrej, and the bully locate the two boys who were held prisoner and free them. They continue searching for Stella and Silenzi, eventually coming across Basili locked up in a cell. He tells Giovanna that he has no recollection of how he ended up there, a claim that Andre confirms after reading Basili's mind. It turns out that Basili was one of Arkleo's mind control victims. They all manage to escape just as the timer runs out, causing the hideout to explode. Inside the submarine, Stella is placed in a capsule, prepared to be sent back to the surface. Witnessing this, Silenzi begins attacking the guards using his telekinesis powers while causing damage to the submarine. He enters the capsule, which Stella launches to the surface, successfully escaping. They are later brought to the shore, where the police are astonished by Silenzi's invisible abilities. Silenzi then spots Andre entering a building and approaches him for a conversation. He understands that Andrej wants to erase everyone's memories of knowing his powers because it's too dangerous, and the kidnappers won't stop. Silenzi then approaches Stella outside for a brief moment together before she forgets what just happened. They share a kiss as Andre begins erasing their memories. In the next scene, we see Giovanna and the officers in the office, having no recollection of the events that transpired and how they saved the children. At school, the students are celebrating a welcome back party for the rescued students. Stella remains unaware that Silenzi is the hero who saved her. In the end, a soldier reports to Yelena, informing her that the mission to bring Silenzi home had failed, but they have discovered a lead on Natasha, who happens to be Silenzi's twin sister in Morocco. Thank you for watching. Please leave a like to help us expand our reach, and consider subscribing so you won't miss more recaps like this.